Hello and welcome here to the Hawks Nest. My name is, of course, Brandon Kane, and we have a very special Hawks Nest show for you today as we are behind enemy lines. We're with our Philadelphia Eagles, the Philly Show special on YouTube to you. And that's Josh Davis coming on in the house here, the Hawks Nest. Thank you, Josh, for coming on in. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Brandon. I appreciate you having me. Kind of reaching out earlier last week to get this set up, but like I say, beforehand we were talking about it. It's always good to, talk a little bit beforehand about the game, get to know about your opponent, who you might be looking into. So, no, this will be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
It's something I've gotten a lot of great feedback from where people seem to really like. And in this new media, it seems like nobody knows these teams like the people covering these teams. And, you're in on it every single day. And it's something that I think people really do value versus some of what they get from a national perspective discussion on this stuff, more high level, less details. Well, and by the way, folks, of course, go over to the Philly Special here on YouTube. Do as we do in the Hawks Nest. Show our love out there here to Philly Special. Get subbed up over to his channel as he's so kind to come do this in the season. He's running probably 36 hours a day right now. So
feels like it sometimes.
It does. Boy, it's a long season, huh? It's a long season.
It really is. It really is. It tests you, that's for sure. But it's been fun. It has been.
Well, it's helpful when you're winning. When you're
That's
winning,
true.
It's kind of nice, isn't it? When you're cooking along.
We both could get back on that winning train. Let's be honest. I know that you guys have been, very difficult as of late, but yeah, I know that we're both itching to have our squad get that dub. That's for sure.
So I guess that's where a great place to lead here is we have two teams that started out this year really good. You guys are a little hotter than us to start the year out. And now we find these two teams at the time of year where you don't want to be playing your worst football, but you kind of feel like maybe you are, aren't you? And that's on both ends of it. We're to a much more extreme degree than you guys, of course, but it is to, lack of a better word. It is where we're kind of at right now as far as both teams kind of searching to find themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. It's been a strange year, and living it every single day is made it feel longer. So you mentioned the 36-hour day. I mean, it was great in the beginning because certainly for the Eagles, we have all this hype coming off of the Super Bowl. So the expectation is we're going to get back. We got all these guys. You return several guys. We can talk about the draft here in a second, I'm sure. But we make some good draft picks, and it's just right. It's a dream, right? I mean, every time you go into the season, that's how you're expecting it. But it was like, okay, we're winning some games, but I'm going to be honest. Like we came away from most of those wins, and the general public feeling was like, it's kind of fortunate. Like we're eking by here, but like there's some holes, there's some glaring issues here. Are we going to get them addressed? And whether it was not playing complimentary football, which I don't know that we've played a full game 100% all year, even close to it. But whether it's, the offense having way too many turnovers because we're 24th in the league, whereas last year I think we were third in the league in turnover differential. So that's been an issue. And then new coordinators. We have an offensive coordinator who was the QB coach. The similarities there because he knew Jalen Hurts for forever. I mean, they've been, I guess, since his childhood almost. And so the morale and camaraderie is there, but just a first year in the league. I think everyone knows you're going to go through some growing pains. There's been more than I think what we expected, but then Sean Desai, defensive coordinator, you guys are very familiar with him, obviously. I was hopeful that this would work. I'm not saying that I'm out on it, but you can already read between the lines of where I might be falling. It's been not great. We're dead last in third down percentage, defense third down percentage. So it's a strange one. It really is. But you mentioned it too. It's like you want to get a win, hopefully right the ship. You'd love to be playing your best football or humming right along at this point. Unfortunately, neither team is now. But that's what I think makes this matchup so enticing. The fact the NFL flexed it to a Monday Night Football matchup. Hey, let's see. This maybe is the catalyst for one of those squads and get rolling.
Yeah, well said. And I would ask you, do you feel like it is that it's, there's this long thing with the Super Bowl losers coming back the next year, and they're sort of feeling like the tank has been a little bit pulled dry. It feels like maybe you're putting this more to, you got some new coordinators, which completely makes sense. We had this with Waldron, a first-time coordinator who it's taken him a couple of years, and even now he's just kind of trying to find his exact footing and technique. But it seems like you would maybe more ascribe it to a bit of that, in that your coaches have been poached for other areas and other jobs, and so that you've had to go through their little bit of in Desai's cases as well, maybe especially, rather than it being what's been traditionally what people think, which is you play those extra 4 or 5 games at the end of the year, you get that shortened off season, the team's just a little bit tired. they and especially falling short, it's really hard to then get the engine coop back up to get it cooked to where you got to be having it at to be that Super Bowl contender.
Yeah. That really is, I think, what it comes down to. Maybe a combination, but it's certainly, can you get back to that same level? And it's easy to, I mean, the recency bias and just what we feel like we remember, because it's so much easier last year to look back at going, oh yeah, like, we had this great run, we made the Super Bowl, all these good games. But if we kind of slow down for a second, and this is the thing that I've been saying on my channel quite a bit, get comments all the time during the live shows. And I think people understand it, but it's like, man, we looked so much better last year. And I think we did look better, but there's a lot of games I could point back to that was a bad game. Like, we played poorly and we had issues. We had consistent issues, and we've kind of struggled. I mean, ever since Sirianni, really, it's not been a great MO of handling the blitz, handling pressure. Now our offense has been not good at all this season. And certainly you see that against the Dallas last week. San Francisco handled it very well, or kind of made us have some issues there too. So it's always a little bit of something. But again, when you're living in the heat of the moment, it feels much worse than maybe it possibly is. So I remain hopeful that we can get out of that. But it's just one of those things where you have so much change and so much turnover, despite having quite a few players, as the main core intact, certainly on the offensive side, that I wasn't hoping to have some of these types of issues. And I even said before the season, I was like, hey, you know what, if we have even a top 20 defense, like, that should be good enough to carry you into the deeper part of the playoffs, which is crazy to say, but yeah. We're 28th. And so we're not as good there. And then even offensively, we should be a top 2, top 3 offense at worst. And just situational play calling. I mean, that's honestly what it comes down to. We have had so many terrible calls, so many poor results, and whether it's a combination, it's play calls, it's execution, the turnovers, like I mentioned. But I don't know. I try to be the eternal optimist on my channel. So many people are like, quick drink the Kool-Aid, you're selling it or what. It's like, I'm sorry, man. I'm a fan. I'm going to hold out for dear life because, I thought we were done on our Super Bowl run and Nick Foles led us all the way to the promised land. So, crazy things can happen, but I'm very much struggling to hold on to that hope. I'm not going to lie, for what we see in the last couple of weeks.
Well, I would say you've got room to be positive because at least you guys' record is where it is, and I'm always a big believer when you get to this point in time of the year, your record is where it is. You are the team you are at that point, good or bad, or middle of the road, as we kind of are ourselves, to slightly less the middle of the road. So I can understand them looking at the last year's team going, well, we felt like we were better. It almost feels like there's a secret sauce, doesn't it? You have all these ingredients. This year, you can make the argument that Eagle team is actually probably maybe even a smidge more talented than last year's team, or pretty close, and you throw it into the pan, and just sometimes the ingredients don't quite come together like they did on the prior dish. Even though all the same stuff's there, and that's why I call it the secret sauce. What is it? The lightning in the bottle thing that you get in the season, where things come together and you become that type of team, that really has become a Super Bowl contender, one of the best of the best. And it's hard to get there. We thought we had some of the similar kind of ingredients this offseason, what we were putting together, hoping we could ascend to where you guys are kind of getting it, where you've been at. And it just has fallen far short in the same way, where you go, man, the talent's there. What's holding it back? And I hear the issues you bring up. Trouble with the blitz, trouble on third down. These are all issues that are issues with my team as well right now, and has been issues with this team, going throughout. So it's kind of funny in that respect. But I still think with you guys, there's every bit the chance. You mentioned Foles, which is a great comparison in a situation where that looked done for once Wentz went down. You have him go in, he goes on a magical run. I mean, I've seen magical runs in my life. And it can happen. And if you have the team that is this talented, this good, a lot more easier to get to that magical run. If you got those that you're building with, you're not trying to just be a bunch of try hard overachievers out there. Like, just give me 110% today, boys. We'll get it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the hope, maybe we could see that. I'm curious too, because it's always, I love to find similarities, but it's kind of ironic, maybe of a sense, the fact that we're playing each other. It's Monday Night Football game, but you guys have played the Cowboys and the 49ers, and we've played the Cowboys and the 49ers. So we're kind of coming off that similar stretch of going like, all right, well, we know what it feels like to lose to those teams, and we just played them. So here you go. Let's see what we can do.
Maybe not quite on that level yet. We're not quite there.
But I'm fearful. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's been 15 years since Philly has won in Seattle. You guys are 7-0 the last matchups. I know I hear you on the concerns, and maybe this is, again, just trying to be a little bit more like humble with my own team here. But as you go into it, I mean, Seattle's not an easy place to play. I think everyone across the league knows that. That's a very easy thing. But from the standpoint of this game here, what are you, I guess, expecting from? I think Geno, is he questionable? I think I saw that report. He's questionable as of right now.
He's questionable.
Okay.
And Locke's been getting first team snaps, so it could kind of still go either way on that one.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess curious to get your take on this. Is it better to get a questionable, however healthy Geno might be, to play, or would a Drew Lock, healthy, him getting the first team reps from what you've seen? And kind of, I don't know if you watched the breakdown of last week or just how Drew played, but curious what might be better for me, I guess is what I'm asking.
Oh boy, I know this is not going to be the answer to your question, but it's the true answer, which is that I don't know that it makes a difference. The issues going on with the Seahawks team and a little bit of where the fan base is, and generally some of the fan base is in a state of kind of, they're kind of down the team. There's a lack of an excitement right now, not because the season's gone bad, but because the issues that sort of plague us continue week after week, year after year, without ever being really resolved or even tried to be dealt with at times, and a variety of issues at that. And so, our defense, for instance, is one where we're supposedly running this cover 2 Vic Fangio, but we're not running anything of like how it's normally run. We're trying to hybridize it. The hybridization has not worked. You end up, rather than picking a lane, you end up, running right down the middle. What's the middle of the point in the fairway or in the freeway where there's just grass and then divots
and then the median there.
Yeah, the median. We're basically end up rolling out. We're taking out pedestrians and bicyclists. It's just horrible. So you've got to pick a lane with it. We haven't with that. Our defense, though, can't stop the run, can't stop the pass. We don't get very many turnovers. We don't cause a lot of pressure or generate any real sacks. We can't get very many stops on third down. We allow big plays, whether you're running or passing. We'll allow you big plays on either side of it. It does become a little bit of one. If I go up against an offense like Philly that has all of these guys that they can hit you with, we struggle against a Carolina offense. We gave up 27 points too early on this year. How do we keep you guys under 34, 35? So then it becomes the offense has to put, like that Cowboy game a couple weeks ago, our offense has to score 37. And that's really hard for any quarterback, Locke or Smith. Between Locke or Smith, Geno's a little bit better. Locke gives you maybe a little bit of the upside because he's still a younger guy, but he gives you much more of the turnover-worthy play. He's going to throw it to you. He's going to give it up at a much higher rate than Geno will. But they're very close together as far as really ultimately, I think, what they bring to the football field.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, but it's interesting. I feel like you're just describing the Eagles on a lot of the aspects, though. You say, the lack of getting turnovers on the defense, third down issues, struggling, not being able to stop certain areas. It's been very similar for us too. So as far as just the scheme goes and everything that you're seeing on that side, I don't know. It feels like one of those matchups. Maybe we get surprised, but I always love to look at the lines and the spread and, hey, what's this going to play out to or get close on that side. But to me, 47.5 does not feel like enough because I don't feel like either team, like you mentioned, I mean, just the fact of inability to stop the opposing offense. I hear you in terms of, hey, Geno versus Locke, maybe not a huge difference there, but from what I've seen so far and, definitely what I know about our squad, there's been so many holes, certainly on those third downs. So if it's going to be conversion after conversion after conversion, I'm kind of just preparing myself for, this shootout of sorts. I don't know, maybe I end up being wrong there, but it just feels like you guys do have a lot of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. I know you mentioned sometimes it just doesn't, that secret sauce, it doesn't really blend together, but the middle of the field, you may already know this, but the middle of the field is wide open against Philly. So for anybody watching, if you have the tight end, if you have Lockett, Lockett is my lock, no pun intended there. But if you want to play someone fantasy wise, I've told everyone all week, they're like, hey, what about the Philly game? Pick him on Prize Picks, pick him on wherever you can get him, and the yardage total over, because we can't stop the middle of the field. We can't stop slot receivers. We can't stop any of that creativity. Smith and Jigba may be a good pick as well, but I don't know. It just feels like one of those shootouts that's probably coming.
Well, I would agree with you if we were willing to throw it short or in the middle of the field. But unfortunately, our offense, rather than being, we brought in Waldron to be a guy that was going to be a Sean McVay acolyte who would bring Sean McVay's offense to this team. He has not done that. Much like taking on the Fangio defense, we've sort of done it in name only, right? Like we married you, but we didn't actually take you in the house. We just took your last name. That's pretty much what we've done here. And it's on both sides of the ball. So our offense looks much more akin to what it was on the Russell Wilson days, where it was a lot of power runs right in the middle of the defense. And then you're going to bring the safety up into the box and then take your shot over the top. And it was real rudimentary, but it worked because you had Russell there who could be the magician behind the pocket at times and overcome a simple scheme to make it work. So we've really kind of in this year at times found ourselves sliding more back in those machinations. And those Russell teams ignored short passes, ignored the middle of the field, partly because he was 5'10" and he just couldn't see you in those passes. But we've still continued to remain to do so. We think it's because Carroll has a real worry about turnovers in the middle of the field. And so he's kind of instructed his coordinators not to go there for that reason. But this stands out, for instance, if you look at, you can see these quarterback heat charts that they'll post sometimes, and you can see where they've hit their completions. And if you type in Geno Smith heat chart, you get a snapshot of the last year pictures of the throws in these games. And it's all outside the hash marks out there on the sidelines, every single throw, and it's either short or they're taking it deep. And so that's where my worry comes in this game, is that I think you guys have some holes that we could attack. I don't know if we're going to be as committed to attacking those holes.
Okay. All right. That's good to know too. As far as, the holes are there, but if they're not going to go middle of the field, I will say, I mean, I think I saw a comment here also, this Abel Gurma, I may not say that name correctly. Hurts has an illness. Jalen Hurts is sick. So you got that going for you. He's got the flu. He didn't practice today, is expected to play. I mean, knowing any guy of Jalen's caliber, there's nothing that's going to stop him from playing, even if he's got a fever, he has not feeling great. Like, he's probably going to play. The question would be, how good on the offensive side, but then defensively, we kind of got the bombshell today that Darius Slay had knee surgery. So he's going to be out for the rest of the season. Now he's hopefully back during playoffs, but talk about the outsides, which we had some issues and some concerns, but you're certainly going to get a chance, whether it's a DK Metcalf. I would expect that James Bradbury will probably be matched up with him most of the game, but you may get a rookie corner. We've kind of been rotating those. So something to keep an eye out as far. Eli Ricks has gotten some, our undrafted free agent out of Bama. He's gotten a few snaps. Keely Ringo out of Georgia has recently come on as of late. Last week against Dallas, he got several snaps and came in. I would, if I had to bet, I would say it's probably Ringo who's going to be the first man up to get his shot. He's made some plays, but like any rookie, like any inexperienced player, you're susceptible to the big play. You're susceptible to getting beat. And, again, you take a deep shot there. I don't know, compound that with the fact that our safety play has not been great, despite getting a Kevin Byard. You would have thought, hey, Kevin Byard, all pro, maybe he can get to a little bit of a former version of himself, but so far he's not lived up to any expectation and played well at all. He's called out Desai, so maybe it's some of Desai, but he's called out Desai for play calling on situational play calling not being up to par. So
Byard has?
He's made the comment.
Chirpy walking in the door.
Yeah, he's like, hey, it hasn't looked good this past week. Byard asked Desai to allow the secondary to do their own scouting. So they scouted you guys. Apparently, they broke it up. So it's real weird in the room, I guess. Not really for sure what to expect, but that's what I say. There's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of change going on. Who's going to be back there playing? Questioning, with the corners, we're going to be out. Our starting middle linebackers at Cunningham, he's officially out. So it'll be rolling with Shaq Leonard, the pickup from, the Colts waiving and bringing in. So probably Shaq Leonard, Nicholas Morrow. That doesn't do us any favors, certainly from the coverage side. So, and then our starting right guard, I should mention that also, Cam Jurgens, he will be out also. And our running game has been a shell of itself without Cam Jurgens this year. I don't have the stats in front of me, but it's something like without Cam Jurgens, we've had like 3.4 yards a carry. And with him, it's been like 4.8. So there's a drastic difference when we've got Cam Jurgens, because he's an athletic guard. He was drafted, for people that may not know, drafted to be Jason Kelsey's replacement at center. And because Kelsey's, the great, God that he is, we love him. So he's actually able to stay there for so long that they're just like, well, we need to use Cam Jurgens somewhere. So they slid him over to right guard. Really athletic, helps in the running game, but we won't have him there either. So you can tell I'm a little concerned, to say the least, about this matchup. I know there's holes on both teams, but you start, racking it up here of quarterback is being sick and other players are going to have to step up and play key snaps. I don't know what it'll look like.
Well, there's that it's an any given Sunday, and then there's that injury thing where you push past the point of, no team is going to be built up to sustain too many injuries. And at this point here, everybody's beat up, but to get to that many inactive guys, that is kind of what happens there. Is I can sense I would be a little bit worried with that too. That does make me feel a little bit better about us to be able to give you a harder push on this game, because we've got some injuries, but I don't know that we're in as rough a shape you guys, especially the key positions you're in it. I do love too. You guys are the first team in the modern NFL I've ever seen us run 3 centers in your interior of your line. You've got Dickerson, Juergens, and Kelsey. I've never in my life seen it ever in my life. It blows me away, but you're making it work. And I bet the communication is like, I bet they're like psychic there with their communication, because already centers are known for talking. You just got like 3 guys sitting there. I just, in my mind, just knowing that, I picture them all making line calls and everybody's pointing and, going crazy with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, take advantage of it for sure. Again, I think it's just the fact that Kelsey won't leave, and we don't want it to, but yeah,
No.
it's like Landon Dickerson was drafted initially, and it's like, oh, maybe he'll be Kelsey's replacement, and Kelsey stays longer. So, well, we got to get him in there. So move him to left guard, and same deal with Cam Jurgens. So I'll take it. That's a good luxury to have with the depth there. Unfortunately,
it blows me away because we did it for years and it failed every time. So we would take these centers like an Ethan Posick and try him at right guard and then left guard, and it would fail. And so it does frustrate to see you guys able to do it and make it work, because it's like, there's no way that should be. I mean, I know that the whole like lazy thing is, center's basically a guard. He just doesn't have to snap now as a guard. It's such a lazy thing. Like, there's no difference between them, but it's you guys have made it work. That's for sure. It's interesting.
It is it's been an interesting experiment. I think certainly credit quite a bit to Jeff Stoutland. No doubt his fame being the Alabama O-line coach and then being in Philly for so long. He survived, I think it's 3 tenures now at this point. He was Chip Kelly, Doug Pearson, and now the current one. I think that's it. He might not have, I don't think before that, but yeah, certainly 3 of them. So that tells you what he's worth, being able to survive those. But yeah, he makes it work. I was going to ask you too, because actually this reminded me here. Nicholas says, isn't Rashad Penny in Philly? So I've got to ask you, because this is the number one topic over the last several weeks, certainly with our running game struggling. So we've got DeAndre Swift, and for some reason the offense doesn't really like to use him a whole lot. They don't like to run the football. Then we've got Kenny Gainwell, who's kind of the spell back. He gets a lot of 2-minute action, third down. He's undoubtedly the best passing block, so I can understand with that. But it's gotten to the point of Philly being irate, saying, hey, we need to run the football. You got picketers showing up to the team complex saying, run the football, calling into radio shows. It's all over the place, right? They want to run the football. We acquired Rashad Penny in the offseason. Now, I know that he was coming off of an injury, but they've given him, I think it's 5 carries, if I'm not mistaken, only 5 carries the entire year. Now, if our running game was firing on all cylinders, I'd be like, well, whatever, we don't need it. But it's like there's an unwillingness, and not only is it not run the ball with Penny, he's been inactive for all but I think 2 games this season. So curious, I haven't gotten to talk to a Seahawks fan since, acquiring. It's been a long time, since we acquired Rashad Penny, but did you guys see anything? And maybe it's hard to say because it'd be, before his injury, but was he showing any signs of kind of already losing a step or anything else like that, but before the gruesome injury? Or I'm just curious to get an outsider's take, someone who knows him from previously.
No, the game he went down in Detroit, he busted off, I think, a 60-yarder earlier in that game, which was on the back of him just outrunning everybody. Rashard comes out of college as this odd guy that he had one of the cleanest medical evaluations that we'd ever had, according to the coaching staff, and coming out. But he had also had heavy usage at San Diego State. So a lot of carries on that body coming out. Mm-hmm. He's also that weird kind of guy who's just sort of naturally 225, 230, who can kind of almost run in that low 4.4s-ish range when he was coming out, right? Like it was in this, usually we get that speed. You got to have like Jahmyr Gibbs size guys that are 190 pounds. You don't get the extra 30 pounds, which then allows him to be, when he gets up to full speed, guys come tackle him. It's not him doing juke moves. You're just falling off his body because he's so big. It looked like to me in preseason with your Eagles team and watching a couple of snaps of Penny that it looked like he was running in mud. And what's always bothered me a little bit with Penny and wondering on sometimes these injuries, because I think sometimes injuries are impacted by how you do train. And when you do see players that have a high prevalence of injuries throughout their career, I think sometimes you can backtrack that to diet and training. And when you look at Penny, you see a guy that doesn't look like your typical running back. He's got the doughy midsection, the doughy arms, And I know this is me, body shaming a player, but like we're making guesses here. And my guess is
Yeah.
that he's not in the best of shape. He's not worked out as hard as he could. He hasn't done all the steps. He probably doesn't even love football. He just loves probably getting paid like it. And I'm not trying to question the guy's heart or anything, but he looked remarkably slower this preseason with your Eagles team than he did in his last day here. And it wasn't that major of an injury that it was going to rob him of that speed. It should have been one that he could get back, but that does come to, and look, he's had a couple injuries, it breaks down the spirit. You're rehabbing here, you're rehabbing there, then you're back to rehabbing again. You can only wonder how that's going to, hurt a guy's mentality. But the bottom line is that you're not going to be able to lean on him. And if I could push back to some of the Eagle fans too, wanting to see Swift, from your head coach's perspective, look at the situation. Penny's a no-go, nothing burger, ain't coming. You got nobody else that you're going to go get off the streets at this time of the year that's going to provide any impact into that backfield. Gainwell is also a guy that gets beat up quite a bit over his time. And he doesn't look like all that terribly effective when he's run this year so far. Swift is your one guy rolling. What does Swift also have? A very rich injury history. What does Swift had happen early on in this year? Heavy usage by the Philadelphia Eagles. There's a formula where you could come, if you're in this middle part of the year hammering him, guess who's not going to be there for the playoffs? Guess who won't have a ground game once you get in the playoffs and when you really need him? Now, that's just my take on it, but I think that there's probably a little of that in Sirianni's approach and how he's managing him. Look at that in difference to how the Niners have been using McCaffrey, where they're riding him like a mule going up the Grand Canyon for 10 tours a day all throughout the season.
Yeah.
It's and if he gets injured, that's the thing no one will talk about. If McCaffrey gets injured, no one will point to these kind of things, but that's what good coaches do throughout a year, is that they load manage these guys, especially positions like a running back that is so easy to break and which you got so thin depth on.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is definitely a good point. We don't want to jeopardize the health there. Certainly, you got to have the running game. It's been frustrating at times because it's whether the running game has not been as effective as the first 2 or 3 weeks in the season, or it's just a completely go away from it. Because as strange as it is, and I hope that I'm proven wrong here. Maybe we make drastic changes, because all throughout the weeks during press conferences this week, Nick Sirianni, offensive coordinator Brian Johnson were saying, hey, we're making changes, we're making adjustments, we did more self-scouting. Again, is that just lip service? We'll see. But we do not run the RPO near what we used to. If you think of Philly teams in the past and having, whether it was Wentz or even Jalen Hurts early on of running the RPO, or even last season, with Shane Steichen running the RPO, that was deadly. That was a deadly combination. This season, it just doesn't happen. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a Sirianni stepping in and saying, hey, Brian, we're not going to opt to go with this as much, or if it's a Brian Johnson call and he say, hey, this is, as an offensive play caller, this is what I'm choosing or electing to go with. But it's a lot more inside zone, and there's not near as many of the options at the RPO. And, again, I'm obviously no professional there. I'm not calling the plays. I don't have experience of doing that, but just optically, you see last season how effective it was. I know teams scheme differently. I'm sure that they would have been preparing, getting ready to stop it. But if you have a playmaker like Jalen Hurts, you insert a DeAndre Swift in there, or even, hey, you want to use Kenny Gainwell a little bit. You've got the options of the past too with AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. It just makes all the sense in the world that you would continue to do that. But for some reason we don't. So like I say, probably won't see too many, but you do. Okay.
I know exactly why. How much? What was the contract you guys paid him this offseason per year? Is he making on average?
It's he's got 50 or almost 50 million. So yeah,
wasn't he injured at the end of last year?
Yeah, yep, he was.
Wasn't Carson Wentz injured quite a bit over his time?
Yeah, yep.
And just to show that I'm being consistent on this, let's go look at another team that had a similar player running a lot of the RPO game, the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. And they've been running the RPO game with Lamar Jackson year after year after year after year. It suddenly came to a stop this offseason, though, didn't it? What happened with Lamar Jackson?
Mm-hmm. He got paid. Yeah.
So you having your quarterback keeping a high number of quarterback keepers on the edge when you're paying him that amount of money, also knowing last year you did get him broke at the end of the year and running that. And we don't know how much exactly he played really well. Maybe he overcame it by the Super Bowl, but was it impinging him at all throughout the end there at all? And he was nails in the Super Bowl. I can't ask him to play any better, but
true.
That's maybe going again through the head of the management on this and looking at that. And if I'm paying my quarterback that money, I don't want him taking as few hits as possible.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can see it. It's one of those that I totally understand. I definitely understand where you're coming from, Brandon. And with any quarterback, especially mobile quarterbacks, you can name a plethora that have been careers ruined or shortened or whatever by taking those hits. It's just that fine line to me, though, of how effective I saw it. I understand that Hurts got injured, but it's like, can he protect himself somewhat? Which he's tried to do that. You might see it even Monday night, but he'll take the football and all of a sudden he's going to go down super early, and he's even done it on designed QB draws. And so I guess to me the frustrating thing is like, why are you going to call a QB draw? Like if you want him to get down, he'll literally take a hand off. He's run around the edge sometimes, and before even taking contact, trying to make something happen, he'll just slide and it's like, all right, 2-yard loss. Let's go get another play. I'm like, okay. I totally fine with protecting yourself, but then play calling, let's just scrap it. It shouldn't be in the playbook, because every once in a while they go back to these phases. And at the same time, you see QB draws that work. I mean, we won the Buffalo game on it. The last play of the game, wide open, run for a touchdown. That's how we went up on the Chiefs late in the comeback. QB draw this year in Kansas City. So it's like, it keeps the defense off balance, but there's so many frustrating times to me where I'm like, it's just the inconsistency. It's like, if you're going to protect him, then fully protect him. Don't do any of that stuff. But it comes in flavors here and there, and it's just like, I can't understand it. If you're going to go ahead and put him out there, I would love to see more RPOs. And then if not, like I say, go with a different option. Go with different solutions there. So I don't know.
That's what I like about the Ravens. They've committed to taking Lamar and moving him into a pro passing style attack and away from the Roman offensive minded. Roman came from the Niners and the Colin Kaepernick offense that they ran there. He applied that to Lamar, and that's what Lamar's been running throughout his career up until this season, where they modernized the approach. And I think what you want to do with these mobile quarterbacks is modernize them, because like you say, your career gets cut short. You're not going to last as long. It's just not a recipe for success. I will also say, for the Eagle fans that are a little bit dismayed by this, get hardened, because guess when they're going to start to unveil this? In the playoffs, when they don't have to think as much about protecting Hurts and all that. He'll go hog wild in the playoffs when you need him to do that. And maybe that's not great. Maybe fans would like to see him doing it, more throughout. But I think what you try to do with the quarterback, you get him early on, you let him, like we did with Russell Wilson, you let him lose his legs, you let him do the read option stuff for a couple of years. Just let him find some effectiveness in that. And then as he's gotten his feet wet and he started to see some defenses, and now he can start to do some quarterback things like processing in the pocket, being great pre-snap, throwing with anticipation, start to have him build on those kind of attributes, which were maybe not there at the forefront initially. And then the game grows and grows and grows. But there are going to be things when you have to make that transition to more of being in that guy. I think there are a little bit of those growing pains you have to go through to kind of like get him to that spot. The good news is that a couple of years from now, he'll be more in that master it mode kind of thing, because he's trying to actually run a true offense. Whereas one of the problems what happened with Russell Wilson, for instance, is he always kind of was in that rudimentary kind of offense. And we never really, we expanded it, letting him get a little more high volume, but it was always with the keeping things really simplistic and sort of easy. So when his physical skills started to kind of erode, the mental aptitude wasn't there as much to be able to take over from the position. But that's just a prediction. We'll see if I'm wrong on that one. That's just a prediction.
I hope so. Keep it in your back pocket. That's for sure.
Keep it in your back. Well, use it when you need it. We know we're going to get in the playoffs. We know that we're going to play this team, and the Eagles or the Niners when you played them a couple of weeks ago. Why show them it? And maybe with the Cowboys, you'd show it more because you want that division and everything else. But it's also like, well, what we really want, what's the most important is Hurts, healthy playoffs. That's what we want. Yeah. And then take our chances and ride from there, because we think we can beat anybody if he's in that state at that point. I'd be thinking that if I was a coach. If with my offense set up as it is, him run the read option fully, like you say, and not sliding at that point. I'm talking head first dives for the first down marker. You know what I mean? Lay it on the line kind of play.
It matters at that point.
At that point, yeah. A guy I want to talk to you about who was the most controversial figure in my Seahawks building throughout the offseason. A guy that was talked about more than any player on the team throughout the offseason. And that would be Jaylen Carter, a guy that had our Hawks fan base split on those who just really wanted us to take him, those versus those who are like, no, there's too many problems. How has been the impact of Jaylen Carter there with the Eagles? And, it looks like a good pick on the head of it.
Yeah, he's been really good. Honestly, to me, he's been better than advertised. I can totally understand the side that was a little bit skeptical, or like, hey, there's too many concerns and just distractions and whatever you want to call it that's come up. And there certainly was that. But I think that when you look at where he's come to, in more so, yes, the Eagles, but more so like the Philly Bulldogs that's being called, or the Philly Dogs because of Georgia. So that's kind of, there's shirts, there's brand, there's everything that you could get now for Philly Dogs. because of all the Georgia players. But I think that Jaylen needed probably, or I wouldn't say needed, that's maybe too harsh on him, but I feel like it was very helpful for him to walk into a place that he was comfortable with. He knew a lot of the guys. He had mentors from whenever he was at Georgia. Jordan Davis, our defensive tackle, was his roommate, and he was the old upperclassman compared to Jaylen, who kind of, the reports were not necessarily kept him in line, but, you could read between the lines. It was somewhat to that extent, I believe. And from the reports there, but it's like him coming to Philly, being with those guys, obviously getting drafted too with Nolan Smith, who he played with on the same team and was there just the past season in the same draft class, joining with Nakobe Dean as well. You could tell the confidence when he came in day one. I mean, at training camp, there's all these reports of he blew up a blocking sled. He's given Lane Johnson a run for his money, which no one before this season, in the last 3 or 4 years had even come close or done anything. They're like, hey, this rookie, like, look out for him. And then I think what did it for me was in the press conferences, I don't think as a vet you ever really go above and beyond. It's one thing to be like, hey, rookies, he's learning, he's growing, he's getting better, but I don't think you want to put like undue expectation on a player. But when you got Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, those guys that are flat out just saying like, hey, who are you expecting to have the biggest impact and to really like shock people this season? And they're all like Jaylen Carter, without question. Like the dude's strength, his ability to impact the game. And then I think as you started to see it in the first couple games, even in the preseason and the regular season, Jaylen Carter, he studies film and he knows a lot more than I think people give him credit for. I think that a lot of times people see just, the highlight tapes and go like, man, this dude's a freak athlete, and he is. But the ability to impact from the mental side and knowing technique and where the blocker is going to be going or certain run plays and designs, it's just been really, really noticeable. Now, I would argue that over the last, 2-3 games, he's certainly been lesser. You can look at it on PFF grades, whether you want to. You just watch the film yourself, watch the games. He's been taken out of plays.
Rookie wall.
That's what I was going to say. It could be the rookie wall. He denies it, but you're going to at that age. I don't think that you believe in any sort of wall at that age. But there might be something there. And so you started to see Sirianni's hinted and referenced that possibility of some rest. Would he not have as many snaps? I don't know. Maybe Monday night. I feel like I won't be surprised if these last couple games that they're trying to save him for the playoffs. And so maybe you don't get to see as much of a Jaylen Carter as we would have in the past. But overall, I mean, even if, he didn't really do a whole lot for the rest of the season production wise, the plays that he's made, the highlights, everything else, it's been better than I could have expected. I really thought that he would come in. I thought he'd make an impact. But I would say he's probably been, outside of Hassan Reddick's been money all year, 11 sacks. I'd say Jaylen Carter's been the best D lineman on the team, which is crazy to walk in as a rookie and say, well, here you go. But Jaylen's lived up to the expectations. That's for sure.
I loved him coming out, and what was wild to me is that he went back and he so struck me as a guy that looked very similar to a great here in Seahawks, a Hall of Famer here in the Seahawks, which had me really, because their games were stunningly close, and that was Cortez Kennedy, Hall of Famer here for Seattle. They both have exactly the same kind of swim move. Like they use this, it's the same way they use it with the one hand, the pull, and then the hand up over the top to the shoulder, and they're so strong and quick to do it. It's unbelievable how good they are with it, and I really think he's going to be a fantastic player for you guys, both now and into the future. And it's the rookie wall thing, I think, is true. We had it last year with our 2 rookie tackles that we selected, really good for about 12 games, 13 games, and then things just start to get a little, that's the longest they've ever played. College seasons are done by this point. So, you go, I get it. It's hard. Yeah, Nicholas Newton, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, I'm over the Fangio scheme. We tried it. No good. How are you feeling about the Fangio scheme at this point? You got Sean Desai running it?
Yeah. I'm probably about right there. I was hopeful that we were going to get Vic Fangio himself. That was going to be, it really would have happened. So Jonathan Gannon is the one who ruined it. And I'm not sure that there's someone who I hate worse. And most Philly people, if you want to ask, you want them to get heated, just bring up the name Jonathan Gannon. That guy, I get
that fire in their gut. Are they killers?
I cannot
he's
wait.
Looking for killers.
He's
looking for killers, Josh.
Yeah, he's looking for something, man. He's like a mix
Pew,
between
pew,
Michael
pew, pew,
Scott
pew.
and what's his name off of Succession. It's
Oh,
like
yes.
he
He's a walking meme, man.
he
It's
is, man.
amazing.
It's ridiculous, but he drives me to no end. Like whenever he at the NFC Championship game, I was at that game, and it's like, we're all going crazy. And then they did the interview on the jumbotron, and they're like, "Hey, are you gonna leave in? You stay in?" Now I get that, like, you got all these people watching you. You want to say the right thing. What are you gonna say right there, right? Everyone's celebrating. All of a sudden, you go, "Oh, I'm leaving." Like, I understand that, but he still doesn't have to double down on it. And he goes, "Oh, no, no." He's like, "Philly's keeping me." They're like, "Oh, really?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm not leaving." He's like, "There's no way that Philly's losing me." And then come to find out, the very next week he's got a meeting, which probably means it was set up before then, because the next 2-3 days later he's meeting with the Arizona Cardinals when he should be prepping for the Super Bowl. So again, the fact that we lost that, people are upset naturally, of like,
Yeah.
he should have been focused on his priorities. And then he doubles down in his opening press conference in Arizona. He's like, Philly fans, they're crazy. He's like, we're 9-0, and we got the number one defense in the league, and they're saying, you don't blitz enough. You don't do this. We want you fired. And you could look anywhere. It was never, ever, Jonathan Gannon, we want you fired. You're going to get criticism, no doubt, but there was never a point. Who says you want someone fired when you're undefeated and you got the number one? So anyway, he just, to me, is an impulsive liar. He said so many things. And then, yes, you have the his pew pew pew, little meme from whenever he did his intro, his motivational bus car speech thing. Like, what is that? Who gets that? Someone's like, does that get anyone fired up? And what does it have to do with anything? And then the best part was, I was like, okay, so if this is what the social team thinks is acceptable to say, hey, this is our hype video for our new
They're
man.
publishing it. They're pushing it out.
What's going on behind the scenes? What can't they publish? What does he actually say? So he drives me crazy. But we should have had Fangio, but because he said he was staying, and he was for sure he was like, nope, I'm staying. There's no way. Fangio had to find a job, so he's like, all right, well, hey, Miami, got an interview offer there. Cool, I'm going to take it, because he had been the consultant in Philly last season, so it was going to be a natural shoe-in, and then all of a sudden it didn't happen. So I don't know. Would it have been better? Maybe. Can't get much worse than where we're at right now with Josiah, the defense. But the Fangio scheme overall has not been working. In a very long roundabout answer. Sorry, that got onto a Jonathan Gannon
No,
tangent.
I love it, because I was hammering Jonathan for it. People were like, you're being mean to him. And they're like, man, why are you being so mean? He's just trying to, I'm like, that's the lamest shit I ever heard in my life. Michael Scott is the absolute perfect comparison. I'm going, this is not real. I'm watching a show being filmed, and it's like they're doing the Office thing where the camera's kind of moving a little bit, so it's steady cammed. I felt like it was that. It was so bad, and I'm like, and the players are just watching him. I'm surprised he's been able to get a couple wins cobbled out of that team this year with that, because I don't know who's buying into that. I don't know who's going to be a killer for that guy. I just what?
No.
Do you got that fire in your belly? Do you got that fire?
Yeah.
And everybody's looking at him like, what the fire and what?
Yeah. What is this guy talking about? Are you serious? And why did I take the bus? What does that mean? How does it apply to anything here? Yeah, I'm like,
what does this mean? What are you saying? Coach, what are you talking about? And he's just looking at the dumb looking face.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I got carried away with it, honestly. You got to have fun, right? You have a YouTube channel. You got to have fun with some stuff. I got a little carried away. I got people that hated on it, but I made a short. Then it's a short that compares how similar Jonathan Gannon is to Michael Scott. So it's like skits between The Office and I had to make fun of it but then as I started going through, I'm like, this is literally Michael's. There are so many similarities in between the two. And I'm like, I'm with you. I don't know how, as a professional football player, I don't know, as a grown adult man, that I'm saying like, yeah, let's go fight for this guy. We're going to win football games. Like, what?
You don't have to be super dynamic. There's guys that you listen to talk coaching wise. You're like, okay, I get it. He's going to, but there's the thing when you get to go like, wait, hold on. No, they're like, these guys are going to be laughing behind this guy after they leave the meeting. Like they're going to be clowning on him. There's no way that, much less getting them to play with the fire and kill their spirit. My God, that is not going to work there. And he's not going to be, I don't think, long for the world. As soon as they get their probably quarterback, he's probably, they'll go find an offensive guy and make it work. The Fangio scheme is a tough one right now, in that it's one that, swept through the league a couple of years ago. and started to take over so many defenses but it's just every coordinator runs it differently. Some like to blitz, some don't like to blitz. Some like to play more zone. Some will lean into a little bit more man-based concepts. The whole thing with it is, but you're supposed to show pre-snap what you're going to do something differently post-snap. We are the most predictable team in the league, pre-snap defensively, and what we show you with our secondary versus post-snap what we do, which then means we're doing exactly the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing with this scheme. It's part of what I say is the counterintuitive nature of the way my team's running right now. Things are supposed to do, but you do it this way instead for reasons, but there's a lot of people who feel like it's a dead defense. I just think it's one that it's not completely dead. It's just, it's got to be run right. And maybe it has to be run by the man himself to be run right.
Yeah. Yeah. I would, I guess we'll see, but I would argue that we might be the most predictable defense on the field.
Oh,
so
really?
we show up in a cover zero look, and we're gonna blitz you. It's cover
That's
zero.
what I don't get. These guys learned at this guy's foot. What did you stop learning? Why do you stop learning at the thing that was at the whole fundamental beginning point of the Fangio cover 2 shell is to disguise, I swear, you're probably in the same boat as me. It drives me up a wall that you're going to, in this modern NFL with all the complexity and pre and post snap motion, that you're going to make things simplistic and easy. Why would you ever want to do that?
I don't know.
And we do the same thing. I don't get it. But this is not the Fangio scheme. Then that's my thing with it. Then don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. It ain't Fangio's scheme. Then it's something else. It's the Desai scheme. It's the Hurt Carroll scheme, whatever you want to call it here. But that's the whole point of it, is you get a quarterback coming up and they've got to mentally sit there and process stuff, and they don't know as sure of what they're getting. And then post snap, oh God, it's this. Mm-hmm. But if I see this and then I drop back here and I know that, for instance, we like to run the cover 3 or cover 4. Those are the 2 defenses you get. Both of those defenses are basically umbrella coverages to try to get to depth and prevent the deep ball, which teams basically don't try to really utilize much anymore. So we're covering 9 routes that rarely teams don't really. You guys run some with AJ, but it's a mix, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So then we have all these guys drop back, and then there's all these holes in the middle and short point of the defense all across the board because we're so preordained to dropping back. We're also showing you that pre-snap. So we're showing you we're going to drop into this. And then what do you think the offenses then do? What do you think your offense will probably be doing then?
It would take advantage of it. Yep.
Bink, yeah, just easy completions all day long. Yeah, it's been the problem at the forefront of defense. So it's good to hear that at least we're not the only ones suffering for this, what I would call idiocracy, because it really makes no sense. You learn from this guy. This guy helped you to get a job by what you learned off of him. Now you get the job and you stop doing what helped you get the job.
I don't get it. I'm with you. Misery loves company, though. So yes, there's that element to it. But same deal. We will play. We'll have. I don't know if we still do. I bet we do, because we're dead last in 3rd down percentage anyway. But we did lead the league in 3rd down and 7 and longer conversions given up, and it's without fail. You could be 3rd and 7, it could be 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, and everyone's going to back up coverage, and they're just going to say, take the first down. You can run a 12-yard dig, and I'm just going to let you run right in front of me, in front of the first down marker. Oh, good, you caught it. Now I'm going to tackle you there, and it never fails. I don't know what it is. You'll devise up. You're hoping for a little bit of throwing off the quarterback. All of a sudden, it's like, well, here's what you get. I was watching one of the film breakdowns from Fran Duffy. He covers the Eagles, a part of the official Eagles deal, and he was showing the same thing. He's like, you have a look here. This is a absolute sound the alarm to the quarterback. A blitz is coming, and what happens? A blitz comes straight there, and there's no change up. They're running from the exact same gaps, and they pick it up. First down. We make it so easy. And, everyone here loves blitzing. Like Philly, that's probably synonymous with Philly as blitzes. Like everyone loves blitzing. Everyone wants coaches to do it. Desai's not done it as much, which it's not necessarily a problem, but the fact that now we haven't been able to get pressure on the quarterback. Like our pass rush, which used to be vaunted last year, 70 sacks and, all this rotational pass rush and dominance and everything else. Like we're middle of the pack, and it's very undisciplined pass rush this season. We talk about Jaylen Carter being good and living up to expectations, but overall, the pass rushers themselves have even said last week after the game, Josh Sweat, he pulled a reporter from the defensive side and walked over to the offensive side to kind of voice some frustration so that not everybody else would hear him, and essentially says, we got a bunch of individuals out here. Like no one's keeping contain. No one's keeping their gap. I'm trying to pressure the quarterback and that's it. And he's like, I'm used to, if we get pressure on a quarterback, everyone's still there to wrap him up and contain. And that hasn't happened. I mean, this season so far, It's been, oh, a little bit of pressure. Well, there goes the quarterback wide open. Either it's a run, he can take off and run, he can scramble out of the pocket, he can keep a play alive. And our secondary certainly has not lived up to keeping any sort of, pass coverage or anyone under wraps there. So I'm with you. There's lots of holes in the defense. There's lots of things that I'm concerned about. So
again, commiseration, dude. We're 24th in our blitz rate this year, I believe, but we are 32nd in 6-man blitzes or more. So again, does our front four get pressure on their own? No, they do not. And you talk about guys leaving their pass rush lanes. My opinion on this is that it's good to trust your front four. I get that. And I'm not trying to be the de facto cliche fan that says blitz a lot all the time. Let's go. But I will say this, when you're trying to trust those front four, they know they've got to get home individually. And they know that there's that pressure to do so. And there's going to be a little bit of, I think, a draw to then leave a little bit of your integrity at that point when you know it's on us to get it done. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's you're dealing with the same blitzes, but when we don't want to blitz with those 6-man blitzes, and when you do get a blitz, like that Fran guy you're talking about, I'd be interested to see if it was these 5-man blitzes to nowhere, as I like to call them. Because you had a 4-man against a 5-man protection. You bring a blitz, you're now getting just 5-on-5. Say nothing of if there's a back there to help up if anybody does get through. Mm-hmm. You've not accomplished the thing you seek to accomplish when you blitz, which is to get a free rusher. Which is to get a guy that, and so it's like you're doing it technically, yes, but you're not really doing it in the spirit by which you would hope to do it. And I don't know if that's what your team's doing with it, but that's definitely with ours, how we've done it.
Oh, I completely agree. It's like I say, the more that we talk this through, it feels like I'm looking in a mirror from the Eagles standpoint and the struggles that we have, because it's the same thing. When we do blitz, it literally looks like, oh, cool, he's blitzing to blitz. Like there's no purpose to it. It's just like, well, hey, we blitzed, we tried it, didn't work, but we threw some guys in there. It's like, there's no
purpose. You guys got it. Yeah, there's no purpose, there's no disguise like you talked about. I mean, that's part of the lack of commitment to doing it. Because if you're bringing a lot of stack fronts, but you're dropping them out a lot of the time, there comes the confusion. But if I always got 4-man and then a guy comes creeping up, it stands out like just this right there, okay, he's coming, no doubt about it. It's really weird. Again, coming back to, I don't get it, man, but it is frustrating. And it'll be interesting to see what the next turn is from an NFL perspective on who's the next Fangio defense, which is the one, or just maybe a learning that you got to run it true. You got to run it real pure to the type of it to make it work rather than your own thing. But it's weird. Look at what Fangio did. I know you probably did, but look what he did with Chicago. With the level of talent he had there as a defensive coordinator and the productivity he got there versus what he's getting from you guys now at the Eagles. He had nothing, and he had like 2 guys in Chicago.
Yeah. There was
like 2 guys.
Absolutely nothing. Yeah. I can't even explain it. It's frustrating. I was like, oh yeah, he could do that with Chicago. You add him here, this is gonna be great. And it just
no brainer.
Not so far. No
brainer. But it's just like the brain fell out or something. I got the job. Feed Me More Seahawks, thank you for the $5 donation. I'm sure you've heard about this one before. Can you tell us about the Lane Johnson false start magic magician rumor? Is it true?
That's a good question. Yeah. To me, I'm not gonna lie. Like I love the Eagles. There's probably a little bit of bias to it. There are several times whenever Lane gets a start, that's like, that looks an awfully lot like it is a false start. Now it doesn't get called, and whether that's because it's Lane Johnson or what, but it feels like I can't remember what's the name of the Chiefs right tackle.
Oh yeah, he's the second. He's the second worst about it.
Yeah, it's terrible. But then he started getting the penalties called on him, right? And so I don't know, for some reason Lane gets away with it. But yes, to be honest, like if I was just gonna sit there and like commentate unbiasedly about a game, I'd probably be like, yeah, there's a little bit of a jump there. I mean, I know you can slow it down and say, well, technically you can't tell if you go super slow-mo.
He's readjusting his foot. He's readjusting his foot.
Right. Yeah. But it's like, okay, I'm not afraid to say, like, if you compare every single right tackle to the rest of the league and mirror image those, like, come on. There looks like there's a little bit of an advantage there. So, again, as long as they don't call it on the Eagles, am I too upset about that? Probably not. But yeah, seems to be getting a slight advantage there. Either that or he's just timed it perfectly and nobody else can.
Yeah, I was setting off the Niner fans a couple weeks ago talking to them about Jadarius Ward. And I said that I thought Jadarius Ward was the second most handsiest corner in the league behind Sauce Gardner. And, they get mad about it. I was like, it's not to say he's bad. He's just taking advantage of what the rules are allowing to do. If they're not going to call it when you put your hands on the guy 10 yards down the field, then so be it. You're getting away with it. But don't tell me my eyes are lying to me and I'm seeing something I'm not, and that's what I'm seeing. So,
right.
I might complain about it, but at the same point, I don't blame him for keep doing it if it's working. Can't
Mhm.
knock him for you
Yeah,
get away with the
until
go.
they start calling it,
Until they start
that's
calling it. Yeah, that's
it's like
right.
with the tush push too, hey, I don't know how long that thing's gonna still be around here, but until they stop it, it's one of our best plays, so let's keep on using it.
That's right. I did say absolutely right. That's what you do look for in the NFL is you try to find your advantages where you can. And it's on the NFL to legislate that down, not on the team to do it. So, or Johnson in this case. But I will tell you, it does look like he's jumped off
It
sides a lot
does.
of
It
times.
really does.
That leg going kicks out like Michael Jackson in 85, man.
It really does. Man, it gets me the most nervous too. It's like if we can make it a full game and he hasn't been called for it, then I'm not as concerned because I'm like, all right, they should have called it many plays ago. But he's gotten a few. He's gotten a few called against him. And for those, it's like then it gets late game and you see it and you're like, oh gosh, please don't. Because you get a flag thrown and whatnot. So I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't cost us, but yeah, it's one of those. It feels like you call it almost every play.
Oh, it does. It does. He had one of the best reps ever seen too with Von Miller. Do you ever remember that rep he had against him? That was all 22 where he takes Von and
Oh,
I
just
think he
throws him to the side. Yeah.
throws him like I think he sent him spinning on the
Yeah.
throw,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, too. I was one of those reps you watch back. It's rare we get an offensive lineman highlight that stands out that you remember, but that was when I was like, holy God, dude.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because it was just like it wasn't even like a full on take him and throw him. It was just like
Yeah,
just give
just
him the
one-handed
slap.
use his
Just like,
leverage and then just, like, launch him across. Yeah, oh, I remember
yeah,
that.
this little slap spin move there. Being more Seahawks, thank you for the $2 donations. Have we talked about Witherspoon yet? Well, that is one guy you guys might be seeing. It sounds like he's going to potentially come back this week, which is real key for us defensively because he's been our best defensive player. And that is Devon Witherspoon for our
Mhm.
Hawks. We weren't sure with picking him, 5'11", 190-pound guy that was a hitter at the corner position. How's that going to work at the NFL level? But it's worked in every way. He's been everything you could want in the corner position. He can play outside. He can play inside. He can play man. He can play zone. He's got ball skills. He can jump routes. He's a great tackler and a hitter. I mean, whatever you want from the corner position this guy brings, I think he's going to be in the future a top 3 corner in this sport and very soon.
That's interesting to hear. I was gonna ask you about him. I'm glad we got the super chat there to get the question itself, but that was a name as we were going through, again, I'm sure everybody does like the millions of mock drafts leading up to the draft and who are we going to get, speculation there. I had Witherspoon as my favorite corner in the draft beforehand. So it was one of those, it's like the Eagles don't usually, it's been a while, certainly with Howie Roseman of drafting corners. It doesn't feel like he values the corner, certainly in the first round selection. But I was like, if of any year, please, because I didn't think Jaylen Carter would fall again. I didn't think he'd go down so far and it would be available. So at that point, I was like, please don't just go with like a boring, offensive lineman or, something like that. Like, could we get a Devon Witherspoon? Could we get a corner there? So, and then I know how long was he injured? Was it just in the preseason or I know he had a little bit of early or maybe off season?
He missed the first game.
Okay. First game. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's good too, that he's kind of caught up to speed. Because I wonder about that sometimes, with rookies and
he missed a lot of training camp. He held out the first week and a half of camp. Then he had the hammy injury. And so we were sitting there going, oh man, is the whole first rookie year going to be done? But the second he's walked onto the football field, he's been dominant basically. Yeah. And it's just every week he's doing something that is kind of eye popping. That you're just like, even last week he barely played and still made a play on the ball on an over route where he jumped it and was almost able to get a pick. Where he's just like, wow, he's always there every week. And your assessment was correct. He has been outstanding, and I loved him too. He was my number one corner outside of it. You have to devote yourself to playing man if you draft him. He can do zone, but he's going to be at his best playing man. And that was my worry with us, is we play so much zone prevalence. We'd get him and then force him into a role which wasn't him at his best. But that's how you need to use him, to let him roll. And we've used him at his best. And especially in the slot, he's shown you he can be an even impact player down there because he plays it like almost like a Sam linebacker and a cornerback with the way he can tackle and pursue and his willingness in that area of the game.
Yeah. That's it's no surprise. Sometimes it's like you watch the tape, you watch the film, you see different breakdowns before the draft, and you're like, oh, maybe that guy's a pretty good player. And then you see kind of how they translate to the NFL. And then I don't know if you're like this, but I'm always like, wait a second, like these were all players on, name whatever team. And in this case, like for Illinois, for example. So you got Sidney Brown, you got Devon Witherspoon, like these players now, it was a vaunted, it was a very difficult, tough defense, but seeing further, just kind of hey, this is like the mentality that these guys showed up with, the play style, the swagger, all that stuff is like, I wouldn't have wanted to play in Illinois, going up against those guys. Certainly the matchup there, going to be cool. Obviously, I'm sure the reunion for those guys getting to see each other this week. But I'm interested if we'll get a little bit more of Sidney Brown. He's been a guy that, talking about another Illinois guy, but hasn't gotten onto the field, hasn't gotten as many opportunities. Naturally, we've got a Kevin Byard, like we were talking about earlier. Reed Blankenship's been fantastic, leading the NFC in Pro Bowl votes for safeties. So he should be good. He suffered a concussion, but it looks like he passed the protocol. So he was a full practice today. So he should be good to go on Monday. So I understand Sidney not getting out on the field, but if there's one thing that I'll say about Sidney that our defense needs and seems to lack is its physicality. There's just not that. There's really not a whole lot of like, hey, there's someone that's going to go and deliver a shot. There's going to go someone that's going to stick his nose in there, going to help stop with a run game. And Sidney Brown's gotten a few snaps and some plays. He played against Dallas a little bit whenever Reed did go out. I think he ended up playing like 21 snaps or something to that effect. But when he does play, he's one of those that plays with reckless abandon. He's got the speed, the athleticism. And truth be told, if I was going to say like, one of the best words to sum up outside of, we were talking about scheme and play calling and all that being a detriment. But if we're just from the player standpoint, our defense kind of just looks old and a little bit unathletic, like as opposed to years past, and seeing like, man, okay, we can make some plays and be playmakers here, get stops, things like that. It just hasn't. So I'm hopeful that Sidney Brown could get out onto the field, certainly making some stops there. But still, like I said, good to see that Witherspoon's been making plays and definitely impact player if he's y'all's best defensive player. So that's
well said about that Illinois defense. They were a different type last year. Jatavius Martin, the other guy at the safety position, went to Washington. I think in the second round was another really good player in that room. And Sidney Brown was one of my favorite players in the draft, bar none. A guy I just loved his tape. It was weird because we heard our coach Carroll talk about Witherspoon as having sort of Troy Polamalu-like energy from the corner position. I personally thought that I saw Troy Polamalu energy from Sidney Brown in his tape with Illinois, with that reckless abandon and they throwing his body around like Troy would do, where it's just, he's taking it on. He's arriving with violence and bad intentions. He doesn't care. There's a little bit, which is the spirit you need in your defenders. Witherspoon's got a bit of it too, absolutely. But I love his upside for you guys. I think a little bit hurt him in Illinois was he was playing all over the place. So that allowed him to develop to just one spot for the NFL and be ready to go day one into one spot, versus being a victim of his own success and being able to be moved from the slot to strong to free at times. They moved him all over the place there in Illinois. And I think that probably does, on top of you get a little bit worried about rookies in the secondary. So you're probably from a coaching standpoint wanting to go with the guys that aren't going to make the mistake or have the growing pains thing go on. But I love his future there. I think he's going to be a really good player for you guys, even if this year he hasn't gotten as much of the feel out there. He's awesome. I think.
I hope so. We're looking forward to it.
Lester Cross, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, when did Brendan Nelson become an Eagles fan and start smiling? He's referencing to one of my cohorts that we do streams on. Thank you, Lester.
Well, there you go. Eagles gear. So
there we go. Brendan's finally made the transition, Lester. He's on the East Coast now. Appreciate you. Feed more Seahawks. He says, I feel like Jamal will be the Parsons of the push. I feel like Jamal will be the Parsons of the push.
Oh, I think I know what they're. Yeah, I think I know what the reference. So, Micah Parsons. This was back whenever we played them in Philly, but we did the tush push, and Micah jumped up to try to stop it, and he basically just crowd surfed for like 5 yards. So maybe he's talking about Jamal Adams jumping up there and crowd surf. I suppose that's what I'd go with.
Yeah, if Jamal plays at this point, there's some rumors that maybe he gets benched here with some of how he's played lately, but that's hilarious. Parsons did that. And hey, you got to find some creative methods to try to stop that thing. The traditional stuff ain't working. So,
yeah,
and how about we didn't talk about Carter. How about the Carter play where he jumped down to try to pick off the ball underneath the center on the spike? That was wonderful. I love that, dude. That was so great to see. I was like, yes, somebody's trying something smart, because those centers are always lazy when they snap it out of those things. They always go, they totally lazy sell it. And then he dived in. It was a perfect play. Well, I know we're wrapping up here for our time. One question I wanted to ask you, and I think it's an important question because it's a little bit of what's guided your Eagles team. And this is a bigger question that really affects my Hawks team. So that's why I'm asking this for kind of selfish reasons here. You have Howie Roseman, a guy that I think is being held in high esteem as maybe the number one general manager or one of the best general managers in the sport working right now. From your perspective, he moved off of that Super Bowl coach so soon after the Super Bowl. There's people here in Seattle that say, hey, Coach Carroll won that Super Bowl 10 years ago. He's got to write his own ticket. And you see a little bit of the difference in spirit between the two teams. Mm-hmm. What has allowed Howie Roseman to have this success like he's had?
That's a good question. I would say probably one of the main things would be just not being afraid to try to get out in front of the curve, and I think he's naturally been successful at that. He's got a track record that can prove it. But he's had some major misses too. So I would say maybe not being afraid to make those mistakes, but to try things. He actually went on Jason Kelsey's podcast, the New Heights podcast, and shared some of his philosophy. It's a great episode. It's probably it's probably like 8 or 9 months old now, but it was whenever right around the draft. And so Kelsey's asking him like, hey, what's your philosophy for the draft? So really cool, because he just kind of talks about what he sees and everything. But I mean, ultimately, I think it comes down to, he said, hey, I just kind of constantly test things like the status quo. Back whenever, you guys know, but the Legion of Boom, right? Like whenever that happened, everyone goes, oh, that's what we need. Everyone needs to it's a copycat league. Everyone says, oh, that works. Let's do it. Let's draft these players. Let's make it really successful, be physical, big in the secondary. And eventually, everyone seems to start catching up. So then you got to find something new. We're talking about the Vic Fangio defense earlier too, case in point. There's just always adapting and trying to evolve. And I think that it's probably just the fact that Howie's not afraid to try to change things, try to shake things up personnel wise, what's going to make a difference. And then, as he starts seeing the league go, well, hey, they're catching up or seeing other things here, then all right, let's try something else. Let's shift in a different area, whether it be personnel wise, trying to add, through the draft or free agency. He's never afraid to go after a deal. I will say that the one answer that I will never have is some of the deals that he's made, certainly with the Titans. There's Rand Carthen. He can't possibly enjoy Howie's phone call. Some teams, I don't know why you would answer it at that point for the deals.
Shut up, go away.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great thing as an Eagles fan, but he knows how to work it with the salary cap. I think everybody or the vast majority of, the national media was saying after the Super Bowl of, hey, can the Eagles get back to where they were? Can they keep the vast majority of the players? Who are they going to lose based on, salary cap and all the ramifications there for free agency? And, with the exception, there's a few for sure, losing Javon Hargrave, losing linebackers, Kaiser White, TJ Edwards. But the sad part is, you didn't even have to lose all of those. Like we actually had the cap space to at least keep one of the linebackers. And I would still argue to this day we should have kept TJ Edwards, but that's neither here nor there. But that's what I say. There's no one's going to be perfect, but I think that again, being aggressive, not being afraid to take your shots, go after the players, and he's got some geniuses in the department with the salary cap and just making those things work. So yeah, I'd say overall, he is definitely a prized possession, and one of the quickest ways to start a fight with a Philly fan is call Howie a name. So I wouldn't do any of that, but
I don't know how anybody couldn't look at him even on any other fan base outside and not look with a bit of, envy in what he's done, because aggression is the right word in what you use. And it's a word that you see is missing from a lot of front offices. And I'm not talking about aggression and just trade deadline deal moves, and aggression. And like you say, ahead of the curve. That's another great way of putting it. Staying out in front of things rather than just trying to ride with everybody else where they're at, looking out with a little bit of forecasting. And I think the modern NFL has gotten to be more about aggression and moving off coaches, moving off scheme, moving off players. Don't get yourself married to anything. Be able to constantly kind of have some fluidity and able to move as you need to move. And I love that about him as he does that. And I think that's what's brought him that success. He doesn't also play with any sort of fear. It doesn't seem like some moves are going to go bad. That's going to happen, but don't operate with a fear of don't operate with that play not to lose kind of mentality as a general manager. Go out there and make those moves, keep them going. And I think success gets rewarded. Look at what happened with the Rams team. Yeah, I know they're turning it over now this year, but they went aggressive as hell. They got rewarded. Tampa Bay got aggressive as hell with Tom Brady. They got rewarded. I just think it's the new, like we've talked about this NFL, it's always changing. It's the beauty of the sport. It's always evolving. This is kind of the new manner of the day. It may change 5 to 10 years down the line, but right now he's in the pocket in the right place of how to do it. And I hope my team can kind of take some inklings from that this offseason with our team on a variety of areas, both coaching and front office. Well, Josh, I want to thank you for coming down here and being so kind to chop it up with me here over at the Hawks Nest. As you have, folks, do me this favor. Please do go to the Philly special here on YouTube. You can also click down the description link below. I've got a link directly to his channel down in my description link below. Do as we do here. Show those folks some love for coming into our house here like they have and he's working like nonstop. I know he is. I am too. So show him that love here in the Hawks Nest. Get subbed on up over there to Josh. And thank you, man, for coming in here and chopping this up. Let's get a final prediction score too as we kind of wrap it up.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I appreciate Brandon too. Just having me on. Like I say, always good to chop it up with the opposing fan base. I know we'll have our differences Monday night. I would say good luck, but I wouldn't mean it, so I won't go there.
I
But
wouldn't either. I
as
wouldn't. I
far
hope
as
horrible luck. I hope you guys. I
as
hope it's a blowout,
that,
honestly.
that's totally fair. As far as the score prediction, though, I will say again, I think it's going to be pretty offensive battle, like we talked about with the defenses. Not too much confidence there. I'm going to say Eagles 31-27. That's what I'm going to go with. How
Well,
about you? You got some faith?
you got
in your
well.
squad,
You
or-
actually you're selling me more on the potential of having a shot. So you're actually, but I'm only going to
Okay.
give 3 points. I'm only giving 3 points for your injury situation. So I was coming into this last night. I had us at 27-20. I'm going to go 27-23 at this point as a score. Eagles.
Okay.
I think we've lost 4 straight. We're backsliding. We're falling into all of our worst habits right now. I hope they can turn that around. I want to see that turned around. But there's so many things to get right so often. And with you guys, there's a couple things you guys got to get right, I feel like. And that's even with the injury situation, that's just not enough for me to feel like we can quite overcome. But we're going to be a hell of a battle. It's Monday Night Football. The crowd's going to be turned up prime time. Carroll teams do well in prime time, so it ain't going to be easy, but it should be a good game at the very least, which is what we both would love to see, I'm sure.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. It'll be
We're going
awesome.
to finish us off. Feed me. Thank you for all your donations. Finish us off with this last little dono here, which I would love to get your thoughts on. Boy, did you ever dodge a bullet on Russell Wilson?
Oh my gosh, that is the truth. Yeah, the report of Russell Wilson initially coming over. So that the crazy thing is, and it's very polarizing for a lot of people with the whole Jalen Hurts argument, right? Because like whenever Carson Wentz was here, he plays really well, gets injured, not ever the same. And you could say maybe it was him not adapting, maybe it was mental toughness, maybe it was the team because there were lots of locker room culture that wasn't really vibing there. But whatever it was, Carson Wentz not great. But he'd gotten a contract really recently, and Jalen Hurts get drafted. Now I had no problem saying this. I was one of those that was like, what in the world are we doing? Why are we wasting a 2nd-round draft pick on a Jalen Hurts? Like, we've got Carson Wentz. You paid a lot of money. We need to see this thing out. Fortunately, we didn't, because I'm happy to say where we're at now. But yeah, like there was a definite chance too of a Russell Wilson as all the reports, began to come out and confirmation and all that of, would Russell Wilson have gone to Philly? Was that how close to happening? I'm glad it didn't. We did dodge a bullet for sure. He's playing better in Denver, right? I mean, he's better than last season, so he's making it.
I mean, he is,
It's not,
yeah, he's playing. He's still, but they're having to dial him back to that same old offense, which is,
Yeah.
He loses 20 pounds. Would he have lost that 20 pounds for you guys at that point? Maybe not. That's part of what that whole loss of physical ability as he grew older is he couldn't move around as much. He gained about 20 pounds. He got a little heavier. He lost some natural. You get 31, 32, you'll lose some natural speed anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And this is maybe some optimism for your Jalen Hurts on this with the mobile guy who maybe looks like a little bit of a limited passer in certain respects early on, but who can grow. And it's the growing and the mental aptitude and the commitment to that. And the quarterback, as you speak about with Wentz, I sometimes get the opinion or the general feeling from Eagle fans that I've talked to past with you, maybe there wasn't as much of that there. Maybe there wasn't as much of that drive from the neck up to get there. And I think that that's something that Hurts seems like he has in droves right now, as far as the work ethic to do it. And if the commitment's there, it's just a thing that doesn't happen overnight. Like Russell couldn't arrive at 32 years old and go, you know what? I'm going to get really great at the neck up all of a sudden. I'm going to dive into this tape. I'm going to throw with anticipation. I'm going to become a master pre-snap of what I see from the Blitz game, and then a master post-snap about where those reads are going to be informed by where they need to go. And you've got to do it. It's like a 10-year process. That's why when you see guys like, to me, Cousins this year, have this year where he just goes crazy, and he's now kind of an elder quarterback, but he was on pace for having his best season this year because you reach a point that you master the sport by 32, 33. Even if you lose a little bit in the physical ability, you've mastered it everywhere. You can't throw them one blitz or one coverage that they haven't seen a million times over, and they know just what the answer is to that very coverage and scheme. So I think Hurts very well could get there, but don't burn him out early. And that's what they're starting to do right now in their approach, which is good to see.
Yeah, that's true. Hopefully we see it.
Well, thank you so much, Josh, for coming on in here, man. I hope we can have you back in again. Maybe when we see you in the playoffs. I joke. I kid.
I mean,
but maybe next
know.
year with us where our records are headed. Maybe we'll end up playing each other next year where this all meets out. But thank you, man, so much for coming on in here and doing this on your Saturday.
Absolutely, Brandon. I appreciate it.
Well, Hawk fans, we will be back on Monday night with we'll be back tomorrow with myself, but back Monday night with the game with the Josh's Eagles and our Seahawks. We'll see how it plays out. It's going to be a fun game, primetime matchup, and one of our better matchups of the year. So thank you for hopping in. Thank you guys for watching. Please hit the like. Please hit the subscribe button. Please don't ever forget, go Hawks. I'll let you get it. Go Eagles. Give me a go Eagles.
Go Birds. There you go.
Go Birds. There we go.